It's Wellness Wednesdays. It's Wellness Wednesdays, and today we're talking about the need to be negative. Why some people have it. And I will apologize in advance. You'll notice I'm having air quality issues. I have a god awful headache across half my face. I'm doing my best, but I'm not at my best. So, fair warning in advance. Yesterday's video was the same way. The choice of doing regular content. If you like what I'm trying to do here, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who uses it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. Just taking a drink to help my throat. If you've been thinking about signing up for a Leanna Care session, now's a good time because people are taking vacations. So there's more space than usual. Just putting it out there. So the need to be negative. And I say this as a need because people have this overwhelming need to criticize, but not an overwhelming need to praise a lot of the time. And there seems to be this belief that, oh, anybody can kiss someone's ass. These people are constantly getting told how great they are. No, a lot of people aren't constantly told how great they are. That's, I think, a big, big, big misunderstanding about anything in the entertainment industry, that people in the entertainment industry are just constantly having their asses kicked, right? Cthulhu, right? When I was in television, it was a steady stream of constant internal criticism about everything. There isn't a lot of positive reinforcement to talent in the TV industry, and in part because everything is so pressurized. Everybody's under stress, and so people tend to go negative. And then something comes out, and people may seem like they're having a great time on red carpets. Those are terrifying. They're terrifying experiences. So keep that in mind when you see somebody looking all glam. It's a 3-day ordeal to look a certain way for those red carpets, and then it is really overwhelming. You just end up going to another place when you're on those things. But then, you get the waves of criticism about what you're doing because it's art. People don't get it. And then you get the occasional person who understands what you do and loves what you do and tells you, and oh my God, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, because it is maybe 15% of the interactions you get in that form of media. It is not the line of kiss asses that people think it is. It's the exact opposite. Because then you have all the rejection from the audition process, and then something will go to pilot and not get picked up, or you'll be shortlisted, you'll be in the running for something, and it goes to somebody else, and it's just this constant getting beat up. And so whenever anything works, it's amazing. It's like you get your reason to live back. Which perhaps because I was a performer since I was about, well, pretty young. But at least 12. 12 I went competitive with dance. You're constantly criticized. And let me tell you, some of the things that adult judges think is appropriate to say about a 12-year-old in a dance competition will turn you white. It was good training for this kind of stuff, just because I learned at a very, very early age. People are fucking assholes, but I don't have to be. And this is why I try to sympathize. I try to talk to people who are incredibly negative. What I have learned is that they all have their reasons They're not necessarily good reasons, but they are real reasons, if that makes any sense. And I don't think that being aggressive with those people or dunking on them too hard in this forum is going to change any minds. People learn what they live. There was an old cheesy 70s, the ones with like the I don't know if you remember ones. The like they sort of had chibi proportions. And they had great big eyes, and they were like a little naked boy and a little naked girl kind of thing. Yeah, that happened in the 70s. But it's the children learn what they live, and I really think that the super duper negative people are living what they learned. So they grew up in incredibly negative households. They grew up being subjected to a lot of negativity, and they just don't know any other way to be. But we all have that need to be negative come up in us. It's not always a bad thing, but you have to gear your negative impulses in a positive direction, right? I mean, if anybody who listens to It's Not Therapy, one of my top 10 phrases is ignoring negatives isn't being positive. You have to face the negatives sometimes for a better life, a better outcome, better results. But I believe there's always got to be some sort of positive intent in the core of what you're doing, because whatever you give attention to becomes stronger. If you are focusing only on the negatives, that's all you're going to see in the world. You're going to downplay or ignore the positives you're getting back and just see the negatives, which is why some people ended up losing their shit over a God of War Ragnarok release date. Like that just, for me, I was like, really guys? Really? A release date? Really? What? Now apparently a rumor went around. Thanks Games Press rumor mill. That a rumor went around that Sony delayed the release date because of the Roe versus Wade announcement. And I guess some people thought that was political, as opposed to just a very, very Japanese version of polite. If that were so, there's an example of you can see this, you're being political, or no, we're being sensitive to the fact that it, hey, this has happened and everybody's fighting. Hey, let's announce the release date for a video game. It might not have been the right call. A lot of people may have thought, no, I could really use some good news right now. But the intentions were in the right place, if that is true. I'm not sure it's true. I don't care if it's true. They'll announce a release date when they announce a fucking release date, right? It's a release date, not the actual game. So, but there's an example of people just, it doesn't make any sense to freak out that much over a release date, and yet people did. And I mean, a bunch of you are probably sitting here, yeah, Leanna, you've been negative about things too. Yeah, we all are, right? We all are about some things. And it's really important to acknowledge when we're doing it. I mean, I go rough on the Games Press all the time. But there's a very positive reason for that. I stopped trying to be kind of traditional games press when I determined that the kind of games journalism I wanted to do is only open to a tiny, tiny portion of the people writing about games. The big names who are now at regular newspapers, like they're the only ones that get access. And increasingly, it's leaks. You can't work with the companies anymore the way you used to from a sense of goodwill. You can't develop sources the way you used to because the games press went so negative. Well, from the time I started in games journalism around 1998 ish, I watched it go from the magazines were still around, and I just watched it go from kind of a symbiotic relationship to just consume the host. And game companies cracked down, they cut off access, rightly so. And then the games media, you couldn't do proper reporting anymore. The number of developer interviews I'd get would go from a reliable dozen per event to maybe one or two, maybe. And outside of marketing events, nothing. It used to be you could write up and at least get something. It used to be you could get 20 minutes with a developer reliably. And then it was submit your questions by email and they'll respond. You can't ask a follow-up question via email. But having been there, I saw that this is not the fault of the games companies. They played ball once. This is completely the fault of the way the games press behaved. And so I go negative on them hard because I really think it's important that people have trusted sources that they can rely on for gaming news so we don't have this freaking out about release dates because nobody trusts anyone. And so, yeah, I go hard and I know they can't stand it, but they didn't like me to begin with. So, right? They always thought I was a pain in the ass, even when they were sort of kind of forced to work with me because you have to pretend to want a woman who knows what she's talking about at a games website, even though when push comes to shove, yeah, there's a lot of projection on the gaming community from games journalists. I'll leave that there. But of course, the other thing I was really rough on, I was really negative on, was The Last of Us 2. And I talk about this all the time. First of all, the game is so negative. The game oozes misery. So I do think there was something of a self-defense reaction of this game is trying to make me feel bad. Fuck you, game. Like, that's healthy, right? When you recognize something is trying to make you feel bad, whether that's a person or a product, going fuck you is, I think, fair and healthy and something that is a survival skill. But then there was the whole crosses in the synagogue thing. And I was just like, other complaints I have about the game are subjective. But this should be something that is an easy, this is a mistake. Show some goodwill by fixing it. It took them fucking months to patch that. Months. While it was this big harassment thing. And I really do think that when you are doing a whole you shall not pass on harassment thing, first of all, I think they totally mishandled that. The harassment of Laura Bailey was epic bullshit. She didn't design the character. She didn't write the character. Why the fuck go after her? It doesn't make any sense. But, 3 wrongs don't make a right. Deliberately enraging the player base by doing a bunch of things a bunch of people aren't going to like, and then seeming shocked when there was a backlash. That's one wrong. The other wrong was going after the voice actress, of all people. That makes no sense. That was the second wrong. The third wrong was the way Naughty Dog handled it, grandstanding, and instead of pouring water on it, pouring gasoline on the whole thing. That was 3 wrongs. And there is this obsession in moments like that of we need to be allowed to criticize, we need to be allowed to criticize, we need to be allowed to criticize. It's like, yeah, recognize that the minute that criticism becomes harassment of someone who has no power, the reasonable consequence to that is criticisms start getting not necessarily ignored, though I do think in the case of Naughty Dog they did use it as a smokescreen to avoid reasonable, accurate, fair criticism, like the crosses in a synagogue. But you know, it is understandable why when things get that heated, yeah, somebody stops listening. It's exactly what I believe happened with Gina Carano. If people internally at Disney would have just given, and she said as much. She said as much, and oh my God, I have to admit I watched the Daily Wire for this. I did, but she said as much that if they had just given her a minute to get her bearings, if they had just given her a minute, but they didn't. That is human. And this is why I don't understand why people who feel bad about what happened to Gina Carano continue the cycle of needing to be negative. There's a way of going about things, a way that expresses that you don't like something or that something didn't work for you, that doesn't involve really nasty, out of place personal attacks. There's no need to call somebody, an asshole or an idiot unless your issue is that they're being an asshole or they're being an idiot, right? If you know they're smarter than they're behaving, stop acting like an idiot is fair. It's not nice. You could word it differently, but it's fair, right? If your issue with somebody is they are just being unnecessarily mean, well, that's it. But most of the time, it's people not liking an artistic product and going after the performer. And this has never made sense to me because the performer is the person with the least amount of power in the whole thing. And this goes from Reva from Star Wars or Rose Tico from Star Wars or, anything else from Star Wars. But it also goes for a lot of y'all are probably too young to remember people freaking out about Michael Keaton being cast as Batman. Yeah, that happened. A lot of y'all probably remember Heath Ledger and the Joker and people freaking out about that, right? So it doesn't just happen to women. It doesn't just happen to people of color. People just use those statuses to say mean things. And what it is it's a transfer of energy. And when you think about it this way, at least this helps me not go there. Because you have all this unpleasant stuff, right? And you want to get the unpleasant stuff out of you, so you're fooling it at someone else. And in that moment, all that horrible shit, feels temporarily powerful. Because it's, wow, Once you settle down, the bad feelings start building again. And instead of examining the bad feelings, instead of going wah the last time didn't really take away my bad feelings for very long, it's the same cycle of build up and wah at someone. And these people just do it again and again and again and again because they know no other way. Because at the core of all that anger is fear. Like, why are they doing this stuff? Why does anybody care that a black lady was cast in a character in Star Wars that for whatever reason they didn't like. I mean, okay, Reva's story arc was challenging. I'm not sure I'm totally on side with it. I'm still mulling it over. But the actress didn't write it. The actress didn't cast herself. Why go after the fucking actress? Because people don't think. They just want to offload. They want to offload the bad feelings. And after time, with some work, you learn to offload your bad feelings in less stupid ways. There's no other way to say this. You offload your bad feelings eventually in a way that actually discharges them for good, instead of this ongoing cycle of build up feeling shitty, take it out on somebody who doesn't deserve it. Build up feeling shitty, take it out on someone who doesn't deserve it. Because as long as you're stuck in, ironically, sort of the Dark Jedi range of emotions, you don't see that there's any other way to express not liking something that isn't just toxic and not making a compelling point. You know, part of the reason I go hard on certain things when it's hard is because that's when you're the most positive, right? When you do something when it's hard, it means a lot more than just jumping on a bandwagon when it's easy. And sometimes you're wrong. And sometimes there are consequences for being wrong. And sometimes there are consequences and you still don't think what you did was wrong. I do not regret for a moment actually listening to people who, you know, were deeply concerned about what was going on with games reporting in the industry. I mean, I knew that their instincts were right, that a lot of shady shit was going on. They were dead wrong about what the shady shit was. They didn't listen to me. But just because they didn't listen to me doesn't mean I still can't listen to them. And there are a lot of people who are now really, really like regular, really supportive viewers of my content because I stuck with them. I don't regret that for a second. I regret that I was ostracized and canceled for listening to people and going, hold on, I don't like their tactics. I don't support their tactics, but I've seen enough to recognize that they have some points here. Now, of course, going up against a big system that doesn't want to change, of course you're going to get canceled. You know, you have to be prepared to take the lumps when you have criticisms. There are consequences to being critical. There are consequences to speaking truth to power. And you have to be prepared to accept those consequences, even if they're not just. Especially when they're not just. Because if you are speaking truth to power going to bite back, right? It's absolutely ridiculous to believe that you are punching up and not expect that person you're punching up at to go boom. That's why it's punching up. I do that for gamers when I think they're right. And that's why I do it for trans people as well. Because that's a very small minority getting used as a political football right now. And I think it's wrong. And I know people think me being trans inclusive is annoying and woke and all that stuff. I don't fucking care. It's the right thing to do. I saw this all go down with the marriage equality fight. And that's just like the majority of people now are like, of course, gay people should be allowed to get married, you know? And when I started, it was like something like 35% support. Because everything I do is driven by wanting to make things better, want to build things up instead of tearing them down. And that's a conscious choice. In order to make that choice, you have to believe that building things up is possible. And you have to believe that you can build things up instead of just tearing it all down and starting from scratch. That never works. Just look at the geopolitics of Latin America to see what happens when you try to tear it all down to start all over again. You don't get anywhere because all some people know how to do is tear stuff down. And people can make a lot of money, the whole bread tube thing, just creating completely predictable content. But for what? You have to live every day in that vortex of negativity and continue upping the ante, it's constantly just saying things you don't necessarily believe because it's a really solid pander that's going to get you super chats. And that may be a good way to make money, but I think it's a lousy way to live. Because at the end of the day, those people aren't happy. At the end of the day, those people don't have an internal locus of control where they say, I am in control of my perspective on things. Things can be difficult for me, and I can acknowledge they're difficult, and I can say this sucks right now, but I don't have to lash out. I don't have to hurt somebody else because I'm hurting. And trust me, that takes a lot of resilience. That takes a lot of strength sometimes. But it's better than looking back and going, I really wish I hadn't done that. And that doesn't mean I never play with somebody. That doesn't mean I don't have fun at someone's expense because they won't have fun with me. That's not what I'm saying at all. Being positive, not needing to be negative, doesn't mean you never fight. It doesn't mean you never stand up for yourself. It means that if you're going after somebody, it's for a reason. It's not just to hurt someone. It's not just to ruin someone's day. And it has to be important enough to bother, right? And what's important to one person is not necessarily going to be important to the other person. And that's very important to keep in mind when you try to overcome the need to be negative, because just because you don't care about something doesn't mean that other person doesn't have the right to care about it, right? It also means caring alone isn't enough. You actually have to make an element of sense, with the trans inclusivity thing. I have hope because, I remember when the whole shit back in 2014 started, everyone was like, feminism is cancer. And within a few months, people around me were going, third wave sex negative feminism is cancer. I'm like, all right, at least they know the distinctions, right? Like that. Little positive things, right? And the only way you can get there is by eating a lot of negativity. And sometimes you have to step back from it. And sometimes you have to fight back against it. I'm glad to see more people, because I believe very strongly in this. I'm glad to see more creators say, this hurts. This is affecting my mental health. Because if you don't say it, people don't know. And they have no reason to stop. This, just ignore it and it'll go away. It doesn't work. It has never worked. What I see ends up happening is you don't ignore it. You just say nothing because you can't ignore it. It bothers you, right? So it doesn't go away. People keep saying it because now they think it's part of your deal, right? Now you're just kibitzing. It's just, I just assume that when someone's constantly negative, it's a bit of a performance because no one could be that negative. Nobody could actually believe that insane shit. But I was reminded recently that no, some people do believe that insane shit. And I'm course correcting because of it. Because ultimately I want to be a positive force. And I not everybody's going to want to come along with that. And that's another thing. You have to accept that the crabs in the bucket are a real thing, right? Like, some people just do not believe that truly positive people exist, that positive outlooks can work. They just believe that anything that hopes for a better tomorrow is just trying to sell you something. It's just grift, right? I don't believe that. And so I'm not going to get along with some people, you know? And that's okay. You can't, nothing is for everyone, right? But that's, you can be more prosaic about people not liking you when you don't play the need to be negative game, right? There's a really great moment, and I'll share this as a closer, on Twitter over the weekend, where I got pissed off at something EA did. EA put out a tweet that riffed on the "she's a 10 but" meme, which I just think is so goddamn stupid for so many reasons. She's a 10, but, you know, she snores. She's a 10, but she likes, I don't know, some stupid TV. She likes Big Brother or something like that. She's a 10. Okay, you're making it very clear that your primary focus on somebody is their appearance, and he's a 10, but I think trended for like 5 seconds on a Tuesday once. She's a 10, keeps going. So we know what this is about, right? We see who this is a target at. EA put up, they're a 10, but they only play single player games. And I was like, excuse me? Like, okay, corporate said the quiet part out loud, but I dumped on EA, and I was like, they managed to be both sexist and insulting to gamers in a single tweet, because even though they changed she to they're a 10, but they only play single player games, anybody who'd seen the memes knows what they're invoking. And a bunch of other female game devs agreed with me. Like, we saw the dog whistle. Even though I don't think it was an intentional dog whistle, EA should have known better. Because, the bigger part is, there's EA admitting that they hate people who play single player games. Oops. But another male dev who's sort of a buddy of mine said, is it sexist? Is there something I'm missing here? I don't think it's sexist. And a bunch of us sort of explained that she's a 10. Mimi's like, oh, okay, well, someone's going to get yelled at by management today. And we're all like, yeah, it was really inadvised. It was trying to be the Wendy's social media account without any of the... But the fact that he felt comfortable challenging me on that really made me happy. Because that means there's it's building positive. It's ultimately going in a good place where other people can come along and disagree, as long as they're not an asshole about it. And we need so much more of that. We need people to kind of go, I don't know about this, and you can have a discussion. It's like, all right, because I'm always aware I could be wrong. You're just not going to convince me I'm wrong by calling me a bunch of names. All that makes me realize, if somebody gets deeply personal and calls me a bunch of names, I treat that as a reaction to making them think for 5 minutes. Because a lot of people think, I have anxiety about thinking. I must be doing something wrong because I have anxiety. Freak out. Go negative. I have to hope that eventually something will sink in and they'll start to see there's a better way. All right, if you like this content, help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it and can't afford it, maybe because they're struggling with negativity. Coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching. It's Not Therapy tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern, and be well.